Welcome to the Dinosaur Review for Kids podcast, a show all about reviewing dinosaurs on a scale of 1 to 10 fossils before only the elite terrible lizards make it into the prehistoric cage match. This program is presented by the Stomp Chomp Roar Company and can be heard within all the rock layers across the planet. Grab your dinosaurs and your official scorecard because it's now time to dig for dinosaurs. Here's your Mesozoic host, Dinosaur Ranger Anthony.
Hey there, all my junior paleontologists. Are you ready for some jailhouse? I mean some Dino House rock? Because it's time to get all shook up. A 1, 2, 3, let's rock. Or should I say, let's fossil? Because fossils are like rocks, and here on the Dinosaur Review for Kids podcast, we talk a lot about all kinds of different dinosaur fossils. You get the point, right? It's time to fossil and roll, baby! Now, nonetheless, let's kick off another exciting episode of the Dinosaur Review for Kids podcast. I'm your Elvis-like host, Dinosaur Ranger Anthony, and I even have my Elvis-like hair twirl for today's review. As you can remember, today's podcast on our road trip across America is in Memphis, Tennessee, specifically a place called Graceland. But what is Graceland, you ask? And this is the former home, not of the king of the dinosaurs, but the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. Graceland is an over 17,000 square foot mansion with 23 rooms. One room is even called the Jungle Room, and it looks like you stomped straight into a jungle. Maybe the jungle in Jurassic Park. The room is filled with green shag carpeting on the floor, all kinds of fake plants in the room, wood paneling on the walls, and tiki-inspired decor all throughout the room. All the room needs is a dinosaur or two, am I right? Maybe a T-Rex, a Brachiosaurus, the Cryolophosaurus, or even today's dinosaur genus. Now, sadly, Elvis even made his last song recordings from this very room. But hey, before we grab our blue suede shoes and our hound dog for today's review, let's update you guys on some dinopreneur news. Now, did you see Sunday's big reveal on social media? You gotta go check out my Facebook, my Instagram, or my Twitter to see all the pictures of my big reveal. I introduced my newest prehistoric pal to the entire world, and his name is Pleistocene the Solidago Monster. Pleistocene the Solidago Monster. Now, Pleistocene is a Sesame Street-like woolly mammoth monster puppet that I made entirely by hand. I sewed every stitch. I made the eyeballs, the eyebrow mechanism. I carved the tusks and the toes. I cut out those flappy ears and so much more. I am so incredibly proud of how well it turned out after 3 long months of hard work. I hit a few roadblocks along the way, but I definitely overcame all these obstacles. He is just too cool, and not cool like cold from the Ice Age. He's too sweet. Now, Pleistocene lives in a futuristic igloo cooler with an oxygen tank-like motor on top so that he can breathe inside. He also eats all kinds of goldenrod flowers, known as the Solidago. That's why he's the Solidago Monster, kind of like the Cookie Monster from Sesame Street. He was always my favorite as a young boy. Now, the Solidago also happens to be the state flower of Nebraska, where I live. So go search Stomp Chomp Roar on social media to see all the pictures of my new Ice Age friend. I'll also try to bring them to next week's podcast episode. Hey, do you guys love space? Do you like the sun, the stars, the planets, and the Milky Way? Then join me for my second Patreon Club virtual lesson in the month of April. It's this Sunday, April 23rd at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll go over all the planets in our solar system, and we'll take a look to see if any dinosaurs might be living out in our galaxy today. Just search Stomp Chomp Roar on Patreon.com to infinity and beyond. Now, can you believe it? We are already halfway to our next prehistoric cage match. I have some great ideas for this extreme who would win battle. I just can't wait to go back into the arena. Now, everybody, let's give a few shout outs before today's dynamite rock and roll review. Shout out to Brandy from Fossil Flowers. We met last week for coffee and talked all about our small businesses. Brandy owns a company called Fossil Flowers, and what she does is she preserves flowers in resin. It's just like fossils. Fossils are the preserved remains or traces of ancient life. And Brandy, she preserves these flowers in resin so that their importance can live on and on, you guys. It is just so completely cool. They're so beautiful, so gorgeous. And I met Brandy while we were working at Piccolo's Florist back in 2015. We loved working with all kinds of plants and flowers, from roses, carnations, which are my wife's favorite, to all kinds of calla lilies and the birds of paradise. I just love all those tropical flowers. And I need to get some of those prehistoric plants as well. I just love all those kinds of things that make it look like they came straight out of Jurassic Park, and I would definitely sell some prehistoric looking flowers if I owned my own little dinosaur store someday. Now, a shout out to Miss Pontiero, the music teacher at Hitchcock Elementary School. Wait a minute. I think I know Mrs. Pontiero, and that's because I do. She's my beautiful ranger wife, you guys, and I'm going to go visit her first graders as part of her music class. My wife is the music teacher over at Hitchcock Elementary School, and I'm going to go educate and entertain the first graders all about prehistoric life as we read Groovy Joe's Ice Cream and Dinosaurs. And I can't wait. I always love telling the kids my Triceratops horn is actually a caveman drum. Bang, bang, bang. I'll see you soon, Bay. Now a shout out to all, whoops, there goes my Edmontosaurus. Now a shout out to all 18 area libraries that have booked me for this year. I can't believe how much support I've received from some awesome librarians. Last year I visited 5 libraries, and this year I'm already up to 18 on the calendar. So thank you all so very much for having me this year. I can't wait to educate and entertain all of your readers. First up is Guthrie Center, Iowa this Friday. Now let's go ahead and grab our hair gel, our white jumpsuits, and our microphones, because it's time for another Elvis Presley show. Or maybe we should just do an Elvis-like dinosaur. Let's start this rock and roll, fossil and review. A 1, 2, 3. Now here we are, my junior paleontologist. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Hound dog? We're not talking about hound dogs. Today we're talking about a dinosaur called the Edmontosaurus. The Edmontosaurus. And this dinosaur name means the Edmonton lizard. The Edmonton lizard. And they named it this because they originally found this dinosaur genus up in the Edmonton, Alberta, Canada area. That is where they found the very first, or the holotype fossil of the Edmontosaurus. Now, what is the dinosaur order? What type of dinosaur is our Edmontosaurus? Well, this one's an ornithischian. Those are those bird-hip dinosaurs. And then it falls into the ornithopod subgroup. Those are herbivore dinosaurs. And then it falls into the hadrosaurids family. So the Edmontosaurus is an ornithischian, ornithopod, and then a hadrosaurid. So it's in that duck-billed dinosaur family with all those other duck-bills, including the Parasaurolophus, who happens to be my favorite duck-billed dinosaur, and our Edmontosaurus right here is a close second. Now, how big was the Edmontosaurus? Its length, its height, its weight. Well, the Edmontosaurus is one of the largest hadrosaur dinosaurs ever found so far. It's the size of a school bus or a fire truck, or maybe even a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So our Edmontosaurus is up to 42 feet long, or 13 meters, up to 10 feet high, or 3 meters, and can and weigh an astounding 12,000 pounds. So this is one of the largest hadrosaur dinosaurs to ever walk the earth. It is just massive. Now, how fast was the Edmontosaurus? How quick was it running? Was it fast? Was it slow? We know it's pretty big. Well, surprisingly, the Edmontosaurus could run up to 28 miles per hour if we were clocking it with our speed gun, and that's pretty quick. Our tyrant lizard king, our T-Rex, only about 18 to 20 miles per hour. So our Edmontosaurus probably could get away from this carnivore if it was to attack long ago. Now, this one is a bipedal and a quadrupedal dinosaur. So our Edmontosaurus could run away from a T-Rex or maybe walk to the watering hole in a two-legged stance on two legs, but then it could also get down on all four legs when it was scrounging around looking for all kinds of vegetation to eat, all kinds of low-lying plants to feed itself every day, because we know our Edmontosaurus is a herbivore. So they can do two-legged and four-legged. Very cool for our Edmontosaurus. Now, something very, very awesome is scientists, our paleontologists, find preserved leg muscles in the fossil record of our Edmontosaurus. And that helps paleontologists determine how strong and how fast our Edmontosaurus really was back during the age of the dinosaurs, running up to 28 miles per hour. Now, what weapons or defense, other characteristics did our Edmontosaurus have? Well, everyone, our Edmontosaurus had a 4-foot triangular profile skull. So if you were to look at the side of our Edmontosaurus, their skull would look something like a triangle, just like a triangle you'd see in geometry class. And that's where I fell in love with my ranger wife, my beautiful wifey Lace. Now back to our Edmontosaurus. Our Edmontosaurus also has a duckbill. They're part of the duckbilled family, and their duckbill was covered in keratin. Keratin is what our fingernails are made out of. So that 4-foot skull had a duckbill at the end that was covered in keratin. That's making it sharper so it can tear away vegetation, making it longer so it's a little bit longer than that 4-foot skull. Now, their duckbill is also toothless. There's no teeth up there at the front of their duckbill. But in their cheeks, they have 1,000 grinding cheek teeth. And what they find are something called dental batteries or dental columns. So there's 100 of these dental columns or batteries that have a bunch of teeth in them. And each column, you guys, there's 100 of them. They make up 1,000 of those grinding cheek teeth. So they're ripping away, shredding all kinds of that low-lying vegetation. Now, the Edmontosaurus has great eyesight, a good sense of smell, and a keen or very good sense of hearing. So they're always able to avoid predators with their eyes, their smell, and their ears. And we talked about ears last week. Where are the dinosaurs' ears? And we'll talk about that after our review today. But something also interesting about our Edmontosaurus is they find the actual inner bone of the ear called the stapes. So they find that bone. So we know dinosaurs had an ear bone called the stapes, just like we do. So we know our dinosaurs could hear all kinds of sounds back during the age of the dinosaurs. Now, their head crest. Did our Edmontosaurus have a head crest? We don't find a bone or a fossilized bony head crest like we see on our Parasaurolophus, but we do find preserved soft tissue from somewhat of a head crest or a wattle that was on top of their head. So our Edmontosaurus right here had somewhat of some hair, a pompadour like Elvis Presley. But something, it's just so cool, you guys. So our Edmontosaurus right here, even though we don't find the bone of their head crest, we find that soft tissue that was preserved in the fossil record. And that gave us clues to know that it probably did have something on its head that was probably used for display. They could tell each other apart between their friends and family, or maybe they even use it for mating. So that soft tissued crest was up on top of their head, and we find it from the fossil record. Now, they also had usable front limbs. So their front legs, their front arms are usable, remember? They can get down on all four legs. Now, they also have 4-fingered hands, and they don't have any thumbs. No! There goes my Edmontosaurus into extinction. It's just so noisy here in the science lab. Now, like I said, our Edmontosaurus had 4-fingered hands, or those front limbs, and they had no thumbs. So there's no thumb spikes like our iguanodontids, only those 4 fingers, and the second and third were kind of somewhat like a hoof-like right there in the middle. Now, they have a very bulky body. They're eating all kinds of food. They have strong rear legs that are helping them get up to those giant speeds of 28 miles per hour, helping them run away from those carnivorous dinosaurs. Now, their toes, they have 3 hoof-tip-like toes, and they also have a flat tail behind them, and they probably live in somewhat of a herd system. The protection of the herd is going to be another defense mechanism for our Edmontosaurus. No carnivore is going to want to come mess with some gigantic herd, or at least the ones in the middle are pretty heavily protected. And they're a herbivore, like I mentioned. Our Edmontosaurus ate all kinds of low-lying plants like cycads, conifers, and maybe even some ginkgo leaves that fell down towards the ground. Now, where did this dinosaur live, and how long did the Edmontosaurus genus live back during that Mesozoic era, the age of the dinosaurs? So our Edmontosaurus comes in during the late Cretaceous period, some 73 to 65 million years ago, and that lived in somewhat of a swampy habitat. We find this one in the western part of North America, all the way from Alberta, Canada, up there in Edmonton, all the way down to Montana, Wyoming, and we also find it in Tennessee. The only dinosaur found in Tennessee is our Edmontosaurus right here. So it's perfect to visit Graceland, the former home of Elvis Presley. Now, it was found back in 1912 and named in 1917 by Lawrence Lambie. And it was found in the Horseshoe Canyon Formation. And it's also very cool. We find mummified specimens of our Edmontosaurus with the preserved skin. I have some of the replica preserved skin of our Edmontosaurus up in my Jurassic garage that I like to take to all of my events here in town. So they find all kinds of mummification of our Edmontosaurus. Remember, those leg muscles, those inner ears, where they find the stapes, and even all kinds of preserved skin. Well, you guys, what are we going to rate our Edmontosaurus on the fossil scale? 1 fossil for some of the weakest, 10 fossils for some of the strongest. Will it have a great score, a good enough score for the Elvis Presley-like dinosaur? Remember, a quick recap. This is one of the largest hadrosaur dinosaurs, up to 42 feet long, 10 feet high, 12,000 pounds, running 28 miles per hour, a 4-foot skull covered in keratin on that duckbill, a toothless beak, but plenty of cheek teeth back there in the cheeks for ripping away all kinds of vegetation, a great eyesight, great smell, great hearing. They can get down on 4 legs, run away on 2 legs, a bulky body, strong legs, and you guys, they're eating all kinds of plants back during the Cretaceous period. So you guys, what is going to be our score here today? I was just so excited to give a review for Edmontosaurus. It truly is one of my favorite hadrosaur type dinosaurs, and I knew I had to give it a great score because even though this one doesn't have any of those true weapons, no horns on its head for protection, it is huge. It's one of the largest hadrosaurs, and that is definitely going to help out the adults. If you could grow to adulthood as an Edmontosaurus, probably not too many things are going to hurt you or attack you, unless maybe you're an old Edmontosaurus or maybe you got sick or whatnot. So our Edmontosaurus is making its way quite up the fossil scale. So at the end of the day, you guys, when I was listening to the Elvis record, I knew I had to give our Edmontosaurus a 6.8. A 6.8 for our Edmontosaurus. It's the year of Elvis's comeback song. A 6.8 for the Edmontosaurus on the Dinosaur Review for Kids podcast. Now, what did everyone think about that rockin' review? This dinosaur is definitely one of my favorite hadrosaurs, aka duck-billed dinosaurs. The Edmontosaurus has no true weapons like horns, spikes, or clubs, but its massive size, I just couldn't put it down into the low 6s like some of those other hadrosaurs we've reviewed in the past. Now, if the Edmontosaurus could only comb its fleshy head crest into some kind of Elvis Elvis-like hairstyle or a pompadour, that would be the coolest dinosaur ever. And another dinosaur that has a pompadour-like head crest is the Cryolophosaurus. This theropod is sometimes called the Elvisaurus, but sadly, I had already reviewed this dinosaur, so I couldn't use it for my Elvis-themed podcast. But go ahead and re-listen to podcast number 36 to learn more about the Cryolophosaurus. Now, Elvis Presley was truly a pioneer of music and the king of rock and roll. He had so many great songs over his 30-year career. There's so many that it's just so hard to pick your favorite one, but I really love the Unchained Melody. And if Elise and I go to Las Vegas this October, I have to get tickets to an Elvis impersonator show. That would just be so much fun. Now, could dinosaurs hear music? Of course they could. How else could they hear all those Elvis Presley hits? But what did their ears look like? We know dinosaurs had ears because we sometimes find that inner ear bone called the stapes, just like on our Edmontosaurus review today. But what did their ears look like? Did they have those flappy outer ears like we do? Well, the short answer is probably not, or at least we don't see it in the fossil record. Now, mammals have floppy outer ears that are made of skin and cartilage, and these soft tissues rarely are preserved in the fossil record. They hardly fossilize because there just isn't any bone in those ears. So scientists, paleontologists, they look at modern dinosaur relatives like birds and reptiles for all kinds of answers. Now, birds and reptiles, they do have an ear opening in their head, and they find these holes behind and below their eyes. And it's hard to see these ear holes in birds because the birds are covered in feathers, and maybe even some dinosaurs were covered in feathers as well. And if they weren't covered in feathers, then we would see it like on some reptiles who just have that ear hole behind and below their eyes. So our Edmontosaurus, where we find their skin impression, they're probably not covered in feathers. They would have had somewhat of an ear hole below and behind their eyes, so they could hear all those noises all throughout the Mesozoic era. So yes, dinosaurs had ears, but they just wouldn't have looked like yours and mine or any other mammal for that matter. And that leads me to another question. If soft tissue hardly fossilizes, what other types of crests and wattles and other soft skin tissues could dinosaurs have had, but we just simply don't know about it because it didn't fossilize? It's just like that Edmontosaurus' head crest, who we originally didn't think had a head crest, but when we found more fossil specimens, we found that soft tissue that was impressed. It was an impression in the fossil of its head crest. So we do now know that our Edmontosaurus had somewhat of a soft tissue head crest or that wattle above its head. Now you guys, a quick joke before we leave for today, before we hit the rock and roll concert, or maybe just listen to some more Elvis records. What did the Edmontosaurus say when he was handed a cheeseburger at the Graceland barbecue? What did he say? What did the Edmontosaurus say when he was handed a cheeseburger, when a herbivore was handed a cheeseburger at the Graceland barbecue? Well, he said, "Won't eat nothing but a hot dog." Not a hot dog, it was a hound dog. The Elvis song is nothing but a hound dog, but the Edmontosaurus said nothing but a hot dog. Isn't that just silly, you guys? Well, during our next podcast episode, we are heading back towards the west and taking the Dinosaur Review for Kids camper into the great state of Kansas. This is right underneath Nebraska, and this is where we'll find a good camping spot and our next prehistoric genus. It might not be a dinosaur. I don't know what kind of creatures lived in the western interior seaway. Also, don't forget your fishing poles. Well, that's it, everyone. Let's grab our Elvis records and get all shook up. Thank you very much. Now remember, my name is Dinosaur Ranger Anthony, your Elvis-like host for today's podcast, and as always, keep digging for dinosaurs. Until we meet again, adios.